Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and we'd like to welcome back to the Joy of Cruising podcast, David and Stephanie, a married couple that performs as an intimate musical duo. David plays the guitar and sings, and Stephanie sings. David and Stephanie recently completed their first contract as cruise ship performers on the relatively small, older, but highly regarded in terms of guest experience, Carnival Elation. David and Stephanie just embarked on their new contract on a different brand, the Norwegian Cruise Line, on one of the world's most anticipated new cruise ships, the amazing NCL Viva. David and Stephanie, welcome back to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
Thank you.
So I suspect it has been a whirlwind time for you. How are you both holding up?
Pretty good for the most part. It's insanely busy. I actually just put out a new video on our YouTube channel about the amount of work that we've had to do to increase our repertoire. Our last contract, the sailings were only 4 and 5 days, and this contract is anywhere from 9 to 13 day sailings. And so the amount of music that we had to add so that we're not just playing the same songs over and over again is it's a heavy load.
Well, you know, with your diverse background of pop and rock, I'm sure you can accommodate them.
Yep.
Yeah, we're having a lot of fun with that, and we're getting really good feedback from crew and people who have cruised a lot before, that we're playing some songs that they're not always used to hearing on cruise ships, which is a nice change of pace for them and really fun for us. So yeah, we're having a really good time getting to know our crew members and getting to meet people that are guests from all over the world. We've had a really cool international guest count so far.
Well, I'm anxious to hear about Viva, but before we do, you know, we had you on last week, and I'm sure we have some guests this week who did not hear that. So why don't you briefly catch the new listeners up, tell them who you are.
Sure. We're David and Stephanie. We are musicians from Chicago, and we're a married couple, which makes this significantly an easier situation to be here with my wife. But we are musicians. We've been doing cruise ships since last year. This is only our second contract. This is still a new world to us, but we are absolutely loving it.
If you want to hear about David and Stephanie's first contract, just click on the episode last week. I think that you will enjoy it. And now they have a wonderful new opportunity, totally different. So that's why I think it's a good thing if you get a chance to check out the previous episode, because their new opportunity, for one thing, it started with a transatlantic flight to one of Europe's great cities and one of my favorites. So I first want to ask you, how'd you like Venice?
Oh, we love Venice. I think as a teenager, I was lucky to get to visit Venice for just one day as part of a choir trip throughout Europe. So getting to go there with David before the cruise ship had even welcomed its first passengers, because we were actually in the shipyard just outside what people know to be Venice. So we had an easy bus ride into Venice and got to explore, and we even had time to get lost. We got lost one night. And in Venice, if you keep walking those little streets, you'll find your way out to a piazza, and some nice person will point you in the direction that you need to go. And that happened, and we had a great night.
It was beautiful. It was so romantic. It was Venice is one of my favorite cities in the entire world because of just how unique it is. There's nowhere like it.
Yeah. And then what's more romantic than the gondola ride?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many. There's such a character, those gondoliers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we visited Venice. We were in Italy, not yet on a cruise. We did get on a cruise, on a med cruise from Rome, but we were staying in Italy for a little over a week, and we took the train into Venice, and we loved it so much. We got a little lost and loved it, and we missed the train back. So that's how much we were into it. But let's get into your new experience. Tell us about Viva.
Well, it's one of, I think it is right now, still the newest cruise ship in the
The
world.
newest ship in the world.
So that's really exciting. Like our kickoff meeting before guests got on board, we had a really nice speech from our cruise director about that, and we kind of felt the positively overwhelming wave of emotions of what it really meant to open this brand new ship. Really, really exciting, and it's beautiful. It still smells new. I know we're on our third sailing from the very first sailing out of Trieste. It's gorgeous. The finishing touches, the art, the furniture, it's great.
Now, Stephanie, you kind of lamented your food situation on your previous contract. Is it any better?
Food is a little bit different here. Yeah, being a vegetarian slash pescatarian, I've had a little bit more variety of vegetables. I think the crew areas, the people in the kitchen take care of us really well, and they understand that like it's better that we're all kind of excited about eating versus the same rice and steamed veggies every single day. So we've got a little bit more variety here. And food on board for guests is exciting as well. There's some specialty restaurants.
There's a lot more specialty restaurants.
Yes.
On our last ship, the only specialty restaurants that we had was a sushi station and then Guy's Burgers, which was delicious, and it was included, so it didn't really feel like a specialty restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Where here, there's a sushi legitimate sit-down restaurant, there's a hibachi restaurant, there's Los Lobos, there's a steakhouse. There's so many options for
fancy
food.
Italian place.
Yeah.
And we got to meet some of the corporate people from these places too. So a lot of the shoreside corporate were here to like set up the restaurant operations. So that was really exciting too, because it wasn't just opening a ship, it was opening these restaurants that are really excited to be part of this too.
And even before we let guests on, they were having the crew members go into the different restaurants, and we got to eat at a bunch of these restaurants that we normally, under typical circumstances, wouldn't have access to.
Now, I know that you're not travel agents, and I'm asking you to kind of step outside of yourself a little bit. But for our listeners, I know with the passionate cruisers that we have listening that NCL Viva is at or near the top of their to-do list. So give us, say a little bit, what can the listeners expect? And I know that your look at the ship has been limited by your duties, but what can the listeners look forward to?
Sure. So I think, from our perspective, I would start with entertainment. I think that the entertainment on the ship is stellar. They just opened Beetlejuice, the musical, on board, which is a phenomenal show, and the whole theater is it's like an interactive experience being in that show. So that was really amazing. There's a different show called Icons. There are handfuls of guest entertainers on the ship at any given time. On top of that, there's obviously live music available in all of the different venues around the ship. So, and then there's the racetrack and all the cool stuff to do in the recreational area. There's darts and axe throwing and all this other cool stuff.
Have you sampled the race track yet?
They opened it up for the crew to do on, we had a crew party right before we welcomed the first guests. And the line was so long to try the go-karts that they closed the line before we were able to get on them.
Oh wow! Well, you'll
Yeah,
have plenty of opportunity to catch up on that. What about have you any comedians?
Yeah,
we haven't been able to see them, but there's been 6 now, maybe 6 different comedians on board.
6, wow.
Throughout the 3 sailings. I think they do 2 per sailing.
2 per sailing.
Oh, okay.
So you get to see the same 2 comedians do however many different sets they have throughout the course of a sailing.
Okay. Yeah,
and even those comedians, they've got different sets.
Sure.
To see someone multiple times doesn't necessarily mean you've seen all they've got.
Yeah. My last cruise, as I mentioned to you all, was on NCL, and it was 16 days long, and it was just a dream cruise. But one disappointment was that they had one comedian, and yeah, that just didn't make any sense. And he only did one set. Well, no, he did one family set and one adult set. So for the adults who who wanted to see an adult comedian, we had one show.
That's such a hard job, especially if you're the type of comedian where you have your material like set versus the type of comedian where you can kind of riff off of your audience. I know on our last contract, we got to experience both types of comedians. One, who's JC Coakley. If you get the pleasure to meet her on any cruise, she's outstanding. But she is really good at both having a set scripted performance and then also showing up to the stage and being like, okay, here we are. And she was standing. She was really good. So I think it's a whole different talent set.
It can be cringe sometimes to watch a comedian who is not used to doing a family show and it's kind of forced into doing that. I've seen a couple of times where they were struggling. So, but if you're a natural, you can do either. So what else have you experienced? Anything?
So there's one feature about this ship that is just absolutely probably my favorite outside of entertainment, and it's the Ocean Boulevard. On deck 8, there's a walkway that goes around the entire ship. So you can just walk around on the outside of the ship around the entire thing. And there's part of it that's a glass walkway that goes out and around. And so you're just
the water
straight down over the water.
It does not feel right. And like everything logically, obviously it's safe. It's been tested, but every time I walk over it, I'm like, but it's a perfect place to watch the sunsets.
We've seen dolphins, whales.
Imagining that, I guess I would do it, but
there is the option to go inside for that part of the walk too.
Yeah.
For wimps like me. So, how long will you be on Viva before you're back in Chicago?
We are going to be on the Viva until January 7th, and then we head back to Chicago. At that time, the Viva will be in the Caribbean, so we'll be flying home from San Juan, which will be a much closer time zone than right now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like or maybe I shouldn't assume, will Ben get a chance to get on the ship?
Yes. So we're bringing Ben out, and he's going to come out and meet us in Lisbon, Portugal.
Oh, wow.
He and my mom are going to be traveling together, and then they'll board the ship in Lisbon and do the transatlantic crossing with us.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, we're really excited.
So when is the transatlantic crossing?
November.
November.
Yep, the week before Thanksgiving and through Thanksgiving. So I think Thanksgiving is actually in one of the islands before we get to Miami. Miami's the end of the transatlantic.
I think Thanksgiving is St. Thomas.
I think St. Thomas. Yeah.
Oh, so when you get to Miami, then the Viva will port from Miami.
There's only 2 sailings from Miami, and then the new home port will be San Juan from mid-December through mid-April. It'll be San Juan.
And then I think it comes back over to the Mediterranean for that part of the season.
So you will be spending Christmas on the ship.
Yeah,
Yep.
Christmas on the ship.
My birthday, Ben's birthday.
Yeah, and
New
St.
Year's.
Lucia.
Now what's the dates Ben will be on?
November 6th, 17th through the 20th.
Something.
I think something November teens through 20 something.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, by any chance, if he was going to be on there on Christmas.
No, he'll be here for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is great. The joy when you got your first contract was palpable. I mean, that's how I discovered you. I was watching your YouTubes, and
cool.
it was so authentic. You did a whole series. I mean, you really seem to have appreciated that first contract. And I mentioned it's on the smallest Carnival ship and all that, but that's no slight because it was a highly regarded ship in terms of customer experience, and you all were a part of that.
Yeah.
But now you're into something totally. Real quick, how would you contrast the two? Viva versus your first contract on Carnival Elation.
Just in terms of the ship itself, is you feel a lot less movement on this bigger ship. On the Elation, I think I felt it every day.
Every once in a while, you'd get a swell that would change the course that you were walking. So you're walking this way, and then all of a sudden a swell, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, all the time. Yes, you feel a lot less here. And the smaller ship made the crew smaller by default. So the crew felt more like a family, like it was a lot more tight knit. And also it was like a well-oiled machine. So when we started that contract, we walked into a crew that knew exactly what they were doing, and they were doing the same loop of ports over and over and over. So we were able to develop bonds and relationships and friendships with these people soon, versus this crew, everyone was new. All these ports are brand new and exciting to everyone too. It's a larger crew, so there's absolutely people we haven't met yet, and so it felt like a little bit of a colder atmosphere. But I know that like once we're all kind of in the groove and we have the time to actually relax and check in with one another, that will probably change.
For us on our Carnival contract, we walked into that having more than enough songs to get through the entire sailing without having to repeat any. So we didn't feel like we needed to do as much homework on the time that we weren't performing. Where now, we step off the ship and we've got charts to download, we've got practice to do. And so our free time is limited now. And add to that, the friends that we've made on the ship so far, I think some of our closest friends are the ones who are in Beetlejuice.
And they've been in tech rehearsals. So they've been like...
They haven't been outside in 9 days.
Yeah, they've been outside in 9 days.
Wow. So for you guys, it's like being back in school.
Kind of.
You perform and then study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you to contrast performing on Elation versus Viva, but it's kind of clear that what one big difference is you need to embellish your set.
Yeah, we're playing a lot more songs. It's fun to Stephanie and I operate very differently. For me, I love putting a chart in front of me of a song that I've heard a bunch of times before and I'm familiar enough with, but I've never played before. Put the chart in front of me and I'll perform it in front of people. I'm cool with that. Where Stephanie has a lot more attention to detail in the performances. And so my ability to recall the gist and the vibe of a song is like, it's right there. But for Stephanie, if the details aren't there quite yet, it feels more uncomfortable for her to launch into a performance in front of an audience.
Yeah, like getting a song into your vocal muscles is very different from getting the chords underneath your hands.
Sure.
But I think also like the heart of our performance Like the other day, we were in the deck 17 observation lounge. So you can see everything outside the ship, and the ship was pulling away from Palermo, and the sunset was happening. And I just like looked at David, and we're singing the songs that we love, and I just like hit with the moment again. Like, I'm so grateful to be right here on the cruise ship. Look at this. This is our life. And I just moved to tears every single time.
That was actually the moment for the dolphin. We saw a dolphin while we were performing. Like, we're singing and looking at the audience, and I look out the window to my left, and I'm like, Stephanie, dolphins. And there's like dolphins swimming next to the ship.
It feels unreal. And it's like those moments I feel like will always happen. If those moments stop happening, then it's time to be on land again.
Well, normally at this point, I would jokingly say, when you talk about the dolphin, I would jokingly say, photos or it didn't happen. But at the time, you had a microphone and guitar in your hands. So
Hopefully, we're hoping we can see more. We do have a little clip of when we saw whales.
Yeah.
Well, but I am looking forward to some good photos.
Oh, yeah.
So
They're coming.
want to tease the listeners with what they can expect on the gorgeous NCL Viva.
Absolutely.
So when we spoke last week, I didn't ask you the typical questions that I close an interview with because I knew we were going to be getting back together. So the first thing I want to ask you that I didn't ask you last week is how can our listeners follow David and Stephanie and David Page Music on social media and the internet?
I think probably my favorite way for someone to follow us would definitely be our YouTube channel. I've been putting a lot of work into documenting what we go through as crew members and putting those into videos. Like you said, Paul, that was how you discovered us. And if you just look up David Page on YouTube, you'll find us. If you look up the Viva, you'll find us. We're finding so many passengers who are coming onto the ship, and they come up to us and they're like, we saw your videos. Thank you so much for putting those together. We were so excited to come meet you. And we love that. That feels awesome. I love that people are finding us and care enough about our story to watch and to come say hello.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you are musically inclined, or even if you're not, and you just like good storytelling, check out David and Stephanie's YouTube channel. I mean, they have a what do you call it when they play videos back to back?
Playlists.
They have a playlist about their first cruise, and it was like I couldn't stop watching. I watched them all in one sitting, and it could be a little mini TV show,
Awesome.
And that's why I say they were very obviously living their dream, and it's almost nothing better than watching someone live their dream. So I urge you to check it out. In fact, after I checked it out, I also am a fan of Reddit, and so I was on Reddit, and so David started a kind of a commentary on Reddit to talk about his experiences. So I was also following that, and let's just say some of the questions that he was asked, I won't repeat them.
The internet can be a wonderful place.
Yeah. He knows what I'm talking about. So
I know the questions you're asking.
Yep. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have an Instagram. It's just David and Stephanie _page. And then we each have our personal Instagrams that you can follow from there too. That's kind of more the day-to-day stuff. And I know I post stories anytime I can of where we are, what we're doing, how I'm feeling.
I'm often posting more about like the behind the scenes on how we do what we do, and what does our setup look like, and what are our sets for the night? How are we putting those together? That type of thing.
And I post about the amazing food in these beautiful port cities that we.
Well, I follow your David and Stephanie Instagram account. I didn't know you had individual accounts, so I'll follow those as well. Besides cruising as part of your profession, are you travelers?
Yes,
Much?
but typically not by boat.
Yes, I had never been on a cruise ship until we started our first contract. But I've traveled extensively. It's in my blood. I need to see more and more and more. And I've done like the backpacker route through Central America, and still working on that route and getting more into South America too. I've been to Thailand through some of the backpacker routes over there, and there's just so much of the world to see, and I'm always afraid that I'm not going to see enough.
Do you have anything booked?
Not right now. It's with how much we are away for our contracts, it's actually kind of difficult for us to figure out ways to travel in the ways that we would like to in between, especially because the way that the custody is working with Ben is that while we're working and on ships, he's living with his mom, and then while we're home and on land, he's with us. And so we want to make sure that he's in school as much as he can be in school. And but if we have a vacation between contracts that lines up over winter break or spring break or summer break or something like that, then it's a little bit easier for us to get out. But right now, our next one, next contract will be sometime in March.
Yeah, and we're thinking about trying to further our scuba certifications maybe in February, if we can take 10 days to go somewhere and become master or advanced divers, looking to further that, see more of the world from below.
Well, what about longer term? What's on your travel bucket list?
Ooh.
Ecuador.
I want to see Africa.
Yeah, Africa. And we've made a lot of friends from South Africa, so getting to go to those cities, and there's adventure to be had there. We've learned about Vietnam and Cambodia are really high on my list. Peru, I want to do Machu Picchu. I want to walk with David for 5 days.
I would love to see like Iceland and Greenland and Norway.
Sweden.
Hoping for a future contract in that area so that we can get familiar with those cities.
Well, I would surmise that your prospects are quite good. Having performed on, again, the ship that was selected as the best guest experience on Carnival, and now performing on a ship that is, probably the world's #1 ship until the next new ship comes out. So, you'll garner some attention, and I wish you the best. I look forward to boarding a ship that you're going to be performing on. So.
Yes, that would be great.
We would love that. We'd love to get to meet you in person.
So before we let you go, a couple of what I call fun or light cruise questions, and then perhaps an oddball question. I always ask this first question so that I can get some ideas for when I'm on a cruise. What's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
Cruise drink. A Negroni. Go to the fancy cocktail bar and get a good Negroni.
How about you, David?
On Carnival, at the Alchemy Bar, there's a drink. It's rum based, and it has like a strawberry type flavor to it, or a berry flavor of sorts. It's called Perfect Storm. That was my favorite on that ship. I loved that drink.
I asked this question of every guest, and that one has come up before.
Yeah, it's a spectacular drink.
The Metropolitan Bar here on the Viva, my favorite drink there is Cafe Replay. It's a vodka and coffee based drink, and there's a Mai Tai on that menu that David loves.
I like the Mai Tai
it's
here
good.
On the Metropolitan.
We met the beverage director, and they've got some good stuff. Yeah.
Now, I suspect the answer to this question will evolve in the next few weeks on Viva. But what's your favorite cruise food?
the tableside guacamole at Los Lobos. It was good.
That was so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Los Lobos was fantastic. I got like steak fajitas at Los Lobos, and that was my favorite food I've had so far.
Next light question is, what's your most memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I think so. The most memorable for me happened so fast. We were transiting the Strait of Messina, so in between the mainland of Italy and Sicily, and the pilot boat. The pilot got off of our ship and back onto the pilot boat, and he saw us on deck 7, and we got this big wave from him and the crew, and like, ciao, and we're like, yay, ciao. It was the very first sailing we went through the strait, and it was just awesome moment. I was like, oh my gosh, the pilot said ciao to us. And the lights of Italy behind it. It was so cool to be in those waters with that happening.
I think for me, my most memorable would be in Grand Turk on our last contract. We went scuba diving. We had waited our whole contract, and we try to make sure that we're not spending unnecessarily. We're trying to put some money away at the same time. And so we saved up to make sure that we would do this once, and we would do it right. And we went scuba diving. And we're checking out this reef, and it drops down like 7,000 feet. So you just see nothing but the color blue. It's so beautiful and terrifying. Mm-hmm. And we saw some sharks. They just came out of nowhere, and there were 3 blacktip reef sharks. And I wouldn't have been able to identify them as it was happening. This was something that I looked up later. I'm like, what kind of sharks were those?
Were those the kind of sharks that eat people? I'm being silly.
That's a good thing to know.
They're about the size of people. They're about our size. And they were still about 20 feet below us. And our dive masters seemed super chill. So we just stayed as chill as you can be when you see sharks 20 feet below you.
They weren't actively eating. So I felt comforted by the fact that they were not hungry, and I wasn't going to do anything to disturb them. So as long as a shark is not actively trying to eat or protect itself or its territory, you're generally fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Finally, I know that you have a following, and welcome to the David and Stephanie fans listening. Share one thing that my listeners and your fans don't know about David and Stephanie.
Ooh. That's a hard one, because I feel like we're pretty much open books in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I'm a bit weirder than people might think I am at first meeting. Okay, so I crack my hips multiple times a day. That's a little known fact about it.
You crack your hips.
Yes.
Yeah, so she'll stand. She's wearing a dress right now, so I won't make her do it. But she stands up and like lifts her leg and then cracks her hips.
Yep. That's a very little known fact.
Very.
That's painful for me to just imagine.
It's a dancer thing.
Oh, it's a dancer. Okay, but then again, for those who listen to the first episode, you're in the gym like every waking hour that you're not performing, it seems.
Yeah.
Just about.
So you can do that. If I did that once, I'll probably have a hip replacement. So what don't we know about you, David?
That as confident as I may seem on stage, I second guess every single note that I sing and play.
True. Yeah. He doesn't know he's good.
It's always uncomfortable.
Oh, that's a news flash, because I've watched you perform so many times, and I just never ever would have guessed that.
Well, thank you for that.
David and Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us at the Joy of Cruising podcast. It's been great, these 2 episodes,
Thank you for having
chatting
us.
with you. And you know, we're Facebook friends, so I will continue to follow your exploits on NCL Viva. But when you do another contract, we'll have you back to give us another of those unique perspectives that you're only going to find here on the Joy of Cruising podcast. A perspective of someone who is not only has done it, someone who's doing it. So we can sail along with David and Stephanie. And you know, podcast is going to last for as long as I can imagine. And I know that these contracts, this seems to be you. And I know that you're going to have a lot of great contracts ahead of you. And so we plan to have you back several times.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
One thing that I want to say really quickly before we head off is that preparing for our first contract, we started watching anyone and everyone who talked about cruising on YouTube. And we grew to really love and appreciate this particular channel called Ben and David. And they were on the inaugural cruise, the very first cruise. And as we were performing, they walked through the atrium filming something. And like, I started having like this starstruck childlike moment. I was like, Stephanie, oh my God, they're right there. It was so cool. And then a few days later, we ran into them again. They were getting onto the same shuttle back to the ship that we were on. Mm-hmm. And Stephanie pointed them out as they were getting on the bus, and I mustered up all the courage I had and introduced us to them. And they were like, "Oh yeah, you were on the Joy of Cruising podcast. Paul told us about you." So thank you so much, because people that we've been fans of for quite some time went onto that ship knowing our names. And
wow.
I don't know that I can explain how cool that feels to us.
It was really cool. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Ben and David were on the show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, take 45 minutes or so and listen to that.
Absolutely.
Not only were they great, but it was a smash success in terms of numbers. So
that's great.
Cool.
As they say, I will see you on the ocean.
See you on the ocean.
All right, guys, enjoy. I'll be following along.
All right. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.